Welcome to Chapter 3 of the Research Methods class for exercise science and sports medicine and fitness technology students. Let me share my screen and we'll get to the lecture. All right, so Chapter 3. So reviewing the related literature is an essential early step in the research process, which is true because, again, most of the time we're not doing like really original. And any type of research you do should be somewhat original in the fact that you don't want to do the exact same thing that somebody else did. So again, let me put this in perspective. If you research the effects of protein or creatine or caffeine with exercise of different sorts, you're going to find a lot of protein research, creatine research, and caffeine research. Okay, so you're thinking, okay, well, what's the point of doing another protein study or another creatine study or another caffeine study? And really the point is you want to find something slightly different, yet it also builds on the body. So again, you might read, okay, I've read like 50 studies that protein helps build muscle, helps build muscles, but like in the day you lift weights and you see this, okay. But you can look at, okay, we can do a heavy lifting study. So you got folks doing like small reps, lots of heavy lifting. We do another study, and we see that, okay, the protein helped them build muscle faster than the folks that were not getting enough protein in their diet, okay? And then we do another study where they do more of that medium, what we call the hypertrophy range, all right? Like that, it's 12 rep range. And again, they lift, you see, okay, it builds muscle. Okay, and then we do another study where they're doing, and again, it's protein versus folks that are not getting, like the excess protein, right? So we're doing like, you're getting so many grams per kilogram of body weight versus those that only get a certain gram per kilogram. So we've got the group that gets, like the 1 gram per kilogram versus the 2 grams, or the 1 gram versus the 3 grams type of thing. Okay, and then we do another one with those that do muscle endurance. So they're doing, like rep ranges to, like that are just exceeding and they go to fatigue. Then we do like maybe an endurance training study. So again, you're doing different modes of exercise. We could do a HIIT study, right? So they're doing high intensity interval training and looking at the grams per kilogram. So again, and again, maybe in each study you see that those that get the 2 grams or the 3 grams are getting more muscle mass than those that get the 1 gram per kilogram, okay? And what does that say? Well, it just builds to this body of literature, right? And so then when you're doing a review of lit, or you're writing your review of lit, you're looking at, okay, well, what, I want to do another protein study or creatine or whatever it is. What this does is this gives you a body of research to look at first to see, am I doing something that's already been done before, okay? And again, if you are doing something that's slightly different, even though you're expecting to see similar results, that's good. That's actually what we want because, again, there's misinformation out there everywhere. And so if you can go from study after study, this is what I usually explain to you guys in class is this is sort of like a lawyer who's building a case with evidence. So again, you've got this person that committed a crime, right? And the lawyer's trying to build a case against this person. The more evidence they have, the more that it paints this picture of this person was at the scene of the crime. We've got their DNA evidence. We've got, like a shoe print. We've got we've got their DNA on the murder weapon. The more of that you have, it solidifies your case, right? If there's any doubt in there, then the jury can be, well, we're not 100% sure this guy or this girl did it, so we're not going to convict them. It's sort of that same principle. If there's too much doubt, then when people say, oh yeah, this protein does this, or caffeine does this, or creatine does this, and there's not a lot of evidence out there, then it becomes more circumstantial and it's not quite, you don't have as great of a theory as you hope to, okay? And so what we want to do is build as much evidence so the theory is a lot more solid, right? And the more solid the theory, then again, it helps people to understand, okay, well, if I'm trying to build muscle, maybe one of the things I want to make sure is I have enough protein in my diet, okay? If I want to improve my sports performance, maybe I need to look at having this much caffeine in my diet and having it this time and all these other things that play into that, right? Or creatine, I need to make sure I have this much creatine in my diet. Now, those are all things that we look at, right? Or I need to do this type of training versus this type of training based on my goals, okay? And that's what we do in our research, and that's what a review of lit is for, okay? So when we do a review of lit, it lets the readers know. So if I'm writing research and I do a review of lit, in whatever I'm doing, it says, look, this is what's been done before. This is why, and the second part is, so here's what's been done before. This is what we know, or this is what we think we know based on the evidence. Again, a lot of times we don't technically know, but a lot of times it's what we think we know, okay? Because sometimes we can't get into the cells themselves. It depends on what it is. Some of the things I'm talking about, we have a better understanding, clear understanding. But sometimes it's just, you do this, we see these results. You do this, we see these results. You do this, we see these results. And so with that, there are some certain things that we're sort of making some scientific guesswork within that. We think it happens because of this, but until we have the technology to actually see that that's exactly what happens, we got to go with it as that's the theory we got, right? It's not a law yet. It's, as long as it's a theory, don't 100% know. It's just best evidence, understanding how the body works gives us the best, it gives us these results and these evidence. We try to paint that picture, okay? But what this does is the review of what tells you, here's everything that's been done before. This is what we think we know. Now we're going to take it a step further, take it in a slightly different direction, or however you want to look at it. And we're going to now do this study. And based on this previous literature, this is my hypothesis. This is what I expect to find. Okay, and so you have these two things that go on. This is what's been done. This is what we think we know. And then because of this is what we think we know, if we do it a little bit different, this is what we should expect to see in this particular study. Okay, so it provides an overview of the state of the current research on the topic of interest. So here's what we think we know. It may be comprehensive and lengthy or focused and short. Again, that's going to be dependent on maybe what you're researching. Again, if it's something that's been, like something that's very high interest, exhaustively researched, then you're going to find a lot of things. So in particular, I'm getting ready to do a research study, and I don't want to spoil anything because I'll probably ask, maybe some of you might do part of the study, but it's looking at some different modes of exercise. Now, if you look in research for one of the modes that we're actually doing is CrossFit. Okay, now CrossFit is basically a brand of, and I don't want to diminish CrossFit by any means. It's not something I do, but if I call it high intensity interval training, or if I call it cross training, anybody that's in CrossFit is gonna say, hey, sort of, kind of, but no, it's got its own animal, right? It's its own thing. So that's sort of why we're doing that one. And one of the researchers in it is he works and does stuff with CrossFit. And so we're going to do it on that. Now, if you type in CrossFit and research in particular, you're not going to find a whole lot of studies. Yeah, you're going to find some, but it's still, not that it's a new concept. I mean, it's been around since early 2000s. But I mean, there's just it's hard to do research on that particular exercise training, and especially because it's got so many different, even within it, it's got some different things to go with that. Okay. So again, when we're looking at doing the review of lit for that particular study, we're going to have to look at CrossFit, but then we'll also have to look at other modes of similar type of exercise training, what we know about it. So things like high intensity interval training, things like cross training, things like Olympic lifting, and some of these other things that are components of it, okay? Versus some of the other exercise modes that we're looking at, right? Again, if somebody comes out with a new like weight loss supplement and you want to see, okay, is this the new real actual breakthrough supplement that everybody's been hoping for, the magic little pill that keeps us all like ripped looking without having to do all the work, right? Well, if it's a new product that just came out on the market this year, there's probably not any research on it. So again, what you're going to have to look for is the ingredients and then see, okay, have all those ingredients been researched in the past, right? Is there something new in this? Okay, and so again, some things, you know, like again with protein, there's a lot of protein studies. I mean, and some great research. Dr. Antonio's done some really great research, especially lately with the, I mean, really pushing the envelope with the grams per kilograms and stuff, you know, going up into the like the 4 grams per kilogram region and stuff like that. A lot of great stuff on creatine, a lot of great stuff on caffeine, a lot of comparison studies between cardio and weight training and you know this nutritional diet versus this and weight loss and all those. There's a lot of stuff in those things. But again, when a new diet comes out, you know, like keto diet, again, you know, like when the keto diet was first coined keto, you know, we're having to look back, okay, what's been done that's similar, like low carb, getting into ketosis. All right, so you have to look at the old Atkins diet and research a lot of that stuff before you actually put the keto diet versus something else. Because again, we want to see what was done in the past, right? So some things may be relatively new. Therefore, you may have a very focused and short lit review. And again, you may not find something exactly on that. So then you got to find things that are somewhat related to it. So again, when you have a hypothesis, you're not just, you know, basically flipping a coin saying, okay, I think this pill's going to work, or I don't think this pill's going to work. Right? You want to look at the ingredients in it, and even though there might not be a lot of study on all the ingredients, and there are some, it may be a very short and focused lit review. Okay? They're commonly used as part of the introductory material for a thesis or dissertation, as well as a research paper. Okay, so again, we use it to build the story, right? So this is what's been done in the past, and this is why we're moving forward in the future. Right, and it is with this particular study, that's what that does. It tells you, here's what we know, and because of what we know, this is what we hope to see through this study. Okay, differs from the original research papers in not including methods or results. Right, so again, you won't write how they did their stuff in the lit review unless it's really absolutely pertinent of some point you're trying to make in there. But really what you're going to talk about is, you know, the findings and how it builds. Okay. Again, it's not part of what you're doing. You know, you may take some components of what folks did before, and you may use that in the lit review to say, okay, they did, you know, in this, and you may refer back in your methods and stuff, say, you know, the so-and-so paper from 2014 did this, and we're going to do this, you know, which is different in this, right? And so this is why, again, why it's important we do it this way, okay, to show that it's different. Enables quickly becoming familiar with primary issues related to the research topic. Again, you know, if you're wanting to do a diet, say you've got a client that wants to do a diet, you know, you may not be familiar with that diet. A lot of my students now are not, you know, a few years back, the HCG diet, back in like the mid 2000s to up to about 2000, I don't know, like 10ish, 12ish maybe. That's kind of something a lot of people are asking me about. Hey, you know, so does this work? Does this work? Does this work? I'm like, well, the fact that you're eating 800 calories a day, yeah, you're going to lose weight. You know, you're not eating. So what do you think? You know, well, does HCG work? No, it's not going to. You know, the HCG pills aren't going to do anything for you. You know, but anyway, so that's kind of a hot topic now. if it comes back again, a lot of my students, you know, those that I'm talking to now, may not have been really into this field. You know, you might have been a lot younger during that time. So, you know, if you were in high school or whatever else, um, you may not be familiar with HCG diet. You know, you may not, you know, a lot of here in a few years, the paleo diet kind of, not that it's really left, I don't know. It just kind of lost, people don't talk about it, but again, it may pick up steam again. And so you may have to, what's the paleo diet, right? And so those things come and go, right? And so again, it helps you to become familiar with that, or something might say, hey, this is like the paleo, or this is like the HCG, or this is like intermittent fasting, or whatever else. If you're not familiar with those things, you can look those things up and become familiar with those, you know, or again, it gives you an idea of, you know, where people are getting these like arguments about how this works or whatever. You know, and it may be neutral or takes a position, right? Again, some things, you know, they'll do research this versus this, and then the conclusion is, well, it wasn't statistically significant that there was a big difference, right? So it's like, look, you can do this diet and lose weight, you can do this diet and lose weight. So again, you know, one of the things that people ask me, okay, what's the best diet? The best diet is, there is no best diet. The best diet is whatever one that you personally will stick to that helps you either maintain your weight, or if you're above the weight you want to be and you want to lose, you know, or if you're below and you need to gain, whichever one you can stick to, right? So if you're not a big person on carbs, you're like, man, I eat carbs, I eat lots of carbs, I'm not an athlete, I don't necessarily need all that energy, I can cut my carbs down, fine, go for it. You know, if you're somebody who's like, no, I need a higher carb diet because of all the things I do and I need in my body, then you're like, but I do eat excessive fats, right? So you can do that. You could be one of those folks like, look, I eat way too many fats, way too many carbs. I need to kind of lower both. You do that. You know, you're one of those folks that's like, I just eat way too often. Maybe you ought to do the intermittent fasting. Okay, well, that if that works for you, that works for you, right? But it doesn't work for everybody. And so again, there's a lot of these things where we do these diet comparisons, especially, and what we see is both work, or all three work, or all four work. You know, it's going to depend on the person. Again, we do them in short term, so we know that as long as there's a calorie deficit, everybody loses weight. But then the real question is, okay, well, which one works best? And that's one of those things we're not going to ever answer in science, because now we're getting into personal, you know, it's really on a personal level, okay? And so it's always going to come down to the individual, right? And so because of that, there's always going to be some of a neutral position on what's the best diet, because there is no best diet for everybody. Purpose for published literature reviews: they provide comprehensive analysis of a topical area. They explain the historical development of a body of work, construct a case for a particular position of view, and inform the reader about recent development. So again, it gives you a good idea of everything that's been done. And again, if you're getting ready to do research, it's nice to find somebody that's done a good lit review, because then it shows you all the stuff that you need to be looking at, right? And a lot of things that you probably need to put in your lit review, okay? The historical development of body of work, you know, sometimes it's really interesting, some things that you think are relatively new. So again, you know, the whole low carb phenomenon, you know, you may find it's like, man, there's been all these different low carb diets throughout, you know, like throughout a lot of years. And, you know, you may be, you know, may surprise you. It's like, oh man, it's been, you know, people have been doing stuff like this for over 30 years. You know, they've just had different names and different things going on. Where some people think, oh no, I never heard of keto or any of that, so I can use that, right? So it gives you the historical development. Again, it kind of gives you a reason why maybe you see a position of view on something, you know. So again, there may be a position on why a particular workout works best for certain type of athletes, or why you do certain periodization for certain type of athletes, or you know, carbo loading for like events, or you know, like some of these different things that folks do. You may, you know, you can look at that and be like, okay, well, what's the evidence for and against that? And you may find, okay, well, all right, there's a lot of things saying that like the best athletes all do this thing. Now, are they doing it because it's just something they do, or is there research that supports why they do it? Because, you know, if you're trying to maximize, like, I don't want to waste my time or something like that, do I really need to be doing this? Okay? Or does my client really need to be doing this? So if you can find a lot of scientific evidence and find the reasoning in it, that it's like, okay, this is what happens when you do this particular type of training or cycling or whatever else. And this is what we've seen when folks do it versus not doing it. And we see mounting evidence showing, you know, that these folks that do that are more successful than the folks that don't. Then it gives you a reason, okay, with my client, I probably need to do that with them. Okay? And again, it informs reader about any recent developments, right? So again, I mean, there's a possibility that a lot of things we are wrong, you know, or there's things we didn't know. Like I mentioned before, we don't know for sure that in humans that hyperplasia exists, which is the not the building of muscle mass. So again, hypertrophy is when our muscle fibers expand and grow. Hyperplasia would be our ability to reproduce or produce more muscle fibers within the same muscles, right? So you could go from having 100 fibers per, you know, like whatever square inch or something like that, to like 150 fibers per square, you know, whatever that may be, right? On top of the fact that we also do hypertrophy, so the fibers can get bigger, but we can also multiply them. So again, we don't know for sure. At some point, because of new technology, and being able to do it in a non-invasive way and in a way that wouldn't damage muscle fiber in humans, we might be able to see that. And so again, when we're talking about muscle building, say 10, 15 years from now, we create something, you know, we can include muscle hyperplasia without a doubt in there because we see it. And we can say, okay, so, you know, and then we can even look at the things, okay, we'll do certain supplements or food sources versus, you know, not having those, you know, do they increase more muscle hypertrophy or more muscle hyperplasia? Okay, or does certain, you know, exercise methods, you know, does one promote more hyperplasia versus hypertrophy or vice versa? And those are things we might be able to answer in the future, right? And so that might be like, you know, recent developments, 10, 20 years, who knows, okay? Purpose for thesis or dissertation lit reviews explains what is known about the topical area again, so kind of something. Points out where there's gaps in knowledge base. Again, there, unless something's a law, there's always slight gaps. You know, some gaps are little itty bitty microscope, you know, where it's like, we know this is happening, we just don't have anything to 100% confirm it. Or there could be some big gaps, right? And you know, and we make jumps. It's like, okay, we see a correlation between this and this. We've done some studies that show that this happens, but we just don't have the why. Okay, you know, we just know that when you do this, this is the end result. Okay, and again, a lot of times, why you do research is trying to find the in between, and sometimes we can build, you know, like more information in between instead of taking it necessarily further. Sometimes we can't. Okay, just demonstrating that the approach, procedure, or instrumentation you plan to use are appropriate. Again, if I want to measure body fat, I don't want to use something that has been used in research so many times. They're like, look, this thing's got a huge thing of error, right? You know, again, you know, it's one of those, if you can get your hands on a DEXA scan, you look at, you know, everybody that's used the DEXA and you're like, man, it's got the least amount of error. I'd love to use that so that when we're looking at body fat percentage change over this time, we're getting, you know, the best, we're getting the best and most accurate measurement for that, right? You know, again, if you don't have the means to purchase a machine like that, but you do have the means to purchase a BIA, right? So bioelectrical impedance, you know, you're like, all right, well, which ones have been used in research and seem to be used the most and seem to be a standard or have been shown to have, you know, a smaller degree of error and so on and so forth, then you can look through that and be like, okay, this is what I want to use. All right. you know, again, are you going to use some type of questionnaire, right? So you're doing a psychological profile questionnaire or something like that. Well, you could make one up, but then someone's going to say, well, you could have biased, you know, the way these questions are written, they're biased. They make you think this, right? So some, you know, people have used certain questionnaires to determine certain psychological profiles, and they've been used over and over and over again. Now people scrutinize them and be like, okay, this is not biased. This really, you know, is set in a, you know, in a very, you know, observational way where you're not inputting what you want in there. And so this is the best one to use. So, you know, okay, let's use this one instead of making our own, or this one's been used in more research than this one. So again, it's been tested more often. Okay? And it also helps establish an understanding of that type of research, right? So again, when somebody's reading through there, they can see, you know, hey, you know, there's either a great body of this, are you just wasting our time doing the, you know, the same thing? Is this another study on this topic? Or are you doing something unique in that? Or again, it looks at something and says, look, this is important. Not a lot of people have done research on it. And so you're sort of in like this small group of groundbreakers in a particular subject that, you know, may hold some really strong implications of, you know, people need to be more aware of this. You know, it's not something that people are really aware of. Okay? So here's the check your understandings. All right, so you guys go through that. Strategies for lit searches. Utilize published original research papers as the primary source of materials. Okay? Include published review papers as sources only when identifying them as such. All right, so here's the difference. Original, again, I love meta-analysis, which would be review papers. Because what it does is it basically, especially when you have, you know, like a lot of people have done some similar things, maybe on like protein, creatine, or diets, or whatever else. You know, it's one thing in one study, you're like, okay, well, did they find it in that study because they did it only on this age group or this gender or whatever else, you know? So there's always that question. Well, when you do the published reviews where they said, all right, you know, this study did all males 18 to whatever, this study did males, you know, 45 and up, this study did females, this age group, this study did this this ethnic group versus this ethnic, you know, and you can compile all that so that like if you can say like in general population, this type of supplement tends to have the same effect on everybody or something along those lines. So there's a benefit in those. But again, you want to go to the original research because you want to see what they did, what was different in each one of those, right? So, you know, sometimes the methods that they used, you can say, okay, well, because of these methods, that's really why we're seeing this. Okay, and so each original research paper is going to have that. So always go there first. And then once you start to see some patterns of, okay, they're doing some similar things, then go to the like the meta-analyses. And then that way, when you're looking at them, you can say, okay, in the smaller populations doing these type of things, we saw this. Now, when all this is grouped together and it creates a larger population, are we seeing the same trends? Okay. And then avoid citation of undocumented or non-academic sources. The only reason you should Google search or look something up would be because, again, it's not been in research yet. Okay, so again, brand new diet, nothing on it, brand new supplement, nothing on it. So then you've got to go to that website to see what's in it, you know, so you might want to say, okay, I went to this website, this is what it says this diet is. Now, again, you don't want to go to the website and say, okay, this is what this diet does. Because again, the website's going to be biased, right? And you may be trying to prove against like, okay, I don't believe that those types of things happen in your body. There's nothing that we've ever seen in science, in any of my science courses, that says this magical thing happens when you do this diet, you know, like keto diet versus the intermittent fasting. You know, there's a lot of misconceptions in both those diets that people believe that don't actually happen, right? And so again, but you might want to go to the website to find out what actually composes the diet. Okay, and if there's no research on it prior, then that's where you got to go and say, okay, the person invented keto or the person invented intermittent fasting per se, say neither one of those have been researched yet. Both of them have. You go to this person who said, okay, here's what intermittent fasting is. So, again, you're going to type that into your thing. Okay, so this is what it is. Again, you just got to be careful what you add in there, because again, you don't want to add in, because of not eating, it puts your body in this weird metabolic state of, only burning this right now. Okay, well, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Or that's what you're going to either prove or disprove. Okay. And so again, you got to be really, really careful, but sometimes you're going to have to put those in. Again, you may have to go to a product website, because you're looking at a product, right? So again, you're looking at a supplement product, or, you're looking at, some other ergogenic aid. You're looking at some technology, right? So say you're doing a study on the Shapeweed or something like that. Some of you are like, what's the Shapeweed? You guys Google and it'll give you something funny to watch, especially when you find the old commercials on it. Anyways, you're looking at a product, does this product actually work? The Ab Blaster or something like that, So again, you've got to, if there's no research on that particular product, you've got to go to a non-academic site to actually, because you need to explain what this product is that you're about to research, okay? And again, you got to be very careful what you cite in there. You need to cite what it is, not what it does, okay? What is it, not what it does, because again, if there's no research on what it does, that's what you've got to establish first, right? That should be probably what you're researching is, okay, what does this do versus what is it that they say it does? All right, does this actually really work? What does a waist trainer do versus what everybody believes it does? Right, another one of those popular things that blows my mind. The other one that's kind of made some traction I've noticed lately during this whole coronavirus is the people wearing the sweat tops. The tops that make you just continue to sweat, and again, I've seen some folks posting like, oh, I'm losing all this weight. Yeah, it's called water. You're going to have to drink that back, or you're just going to stay in a dehydrated state. What I don't know what you're trying to do, but no, it's not making you lose any more fat. And if you're wondering why those products are still out there, it's because we have folks that are in fighting sports that have to make weight, and it is a useful tool for those type of athletes. Outside of that, don't buy those silly things. The other thing is the high altitude masks. They don't work. If you want to use it because it's coronavirus and you need a mask or something to go to the store, go ahead, but it's not going to somehow make you altitude train, all right? So always go online first, okay? Again, there's online search engines. PubMed is a great one to go on. Eric, Ovid. Again, you can go to certain sites such as the ISSN, the NSCA, and there's actually some researchers out there that do things like like Alan Aragon. He does the Alan Aragon review. You could subscribe to his thing where he basically takes research and he sort of, I don't want to say dummies it down. I mean, it's still very, like you've got to have a decent understanding of what he's talking about. But you go on there and you can look at his take on what the research actually is. But again, I would use that as a first step to find something interesting, then go and then actually look at the original research, okay, and so that you can see what his thought is on it. But again, he looks at the subjects, especially in our area of expertise, and he kind of reviews and looks at all those things. You can go there first, then make your way to the actual site. But there's a lot of ways to get there. But PubMed's usually one. Again, if you don't have access to PubMed for whatever reason, you can use Google Scholar. Be careful with that one because again, sometimes you got to know how to use it to find the peer-reviewed articles. There's still a lot of things that will come up. It's not as bad as using Google or Bing or anything like that, but again, there's things that pop up on there that aren't actually in peer-reviewed journals. Okay, so again, you've got to be really careful. You know, you've got to, when you find something on there, then you've got to search and research and make sure that it's coming from a legit research journal and not something that sounds sciencey and really isn't, because there's a lot of journals out there, and especially online journals now, that have very scientific sounding names, or very health, you know, or medical sounding names, or nutrition sounding names, or fitness sounding names, that you think, okay, this sounds like a legitimate source, but they're not. Okay. And again, PubMed's great for, you know, like ours, like Exercise Science, has a lot of National Center for Biotech has Biomed, biological research, and you may well, and you can set up automatic searches on a monthly or weekly basis. Eric was one I talked about, provides links to bibliographic records of journal articles and other education related materials, has more than 1.2 million sources. U.S. Department of Education, Institute of Educational Services sponsors it. And again, if you're looking at things that are, you know, physical education related, you know, which a lot of stuff that we do, anything with the fitness section, Google Scholar, and I said, indexes full text papers from peer-reviewed online journals, includes a broad spectrum of disciplines. Again, they're in there, but again, with Google, it doesn't clear out all the garbage either. All right, so people have found ways, you know, back when Google Scholar, you know, you got on Google Scholar, say, you know, maybe 10 years ago or so, it may have been more concise and mostly peer-reviewed stuff. Now, people found ways to get non-peer-reviewed journal sounding things on there, so you still got to be educated in how to read that, so to speak. Have subscriptions to things. Again, you know, if you work at an institution that has a subscription, you know, again, I wouldn't want to pay for all these subscriptions. So if your institution has them, or you're at a school that has subscriptions to different things, you can utilize that through the libraries. Okay. Ovid's another one that there's a lot of databases and journals and things that you can go through. I mentioned that one earlier. Again, you know, Web of Science, here's one. I've never used this one. And not really something I haven't found anything, I guess, where I've had to go. And I've never used the Physical Education Index either. EBSCO is another one that I've looked through in some of the things that I've done. Sport Discus is one that's provided by EBSCO. This is where you'll find a lot of things on sports medicine, and especially if you're looking at, I think I used this one when I was looking for a lot of stuff for my thesis on injuries. All right, so delimiting searches. So define the topic as specifically and narrowly as possible. So again, one of the problems with doing this is when you do that, sometimes, you know, you don't find much, okay? But sometimes good because, you know, if you put in something like protein, you know, you just write the word protein into a search, it's like, whew, all kinds of stuff comes up. You know, it could be anything like, how does protein affect the heart? How does protein affect the liver? How does protein, and you're like, nah, I just want to see how it affects with exercise, you know, and I want to look at, you know, different amounts. So again, you may want to write in there, you know, protein and exercise. And then again, you may find too much. So you want to put protein and cardiovascular exercise, or protein and weight training, or you may want to even look at grams per kilograms of protein. And, you know, like the more specific you get, yeah, it's going to limit what comes up, but that can be good. That can also be bad. You know, you may not find anything, right? And so then you've got to, you know, you've got to broaden out, but it's always good to go from specific to broaden out, because it's a lot easier to go through a few things that seem to be right on your subject, and maybe you don't find enough research, well then, okay, so then you kind of broaden what your search is. And then, you know, you go from finding 5 articles to 20, you know, and then, okay, well, let's take a couple other specific words out and you get to like 30 or whatever, you know, so you can go that way. Limit the number of years for the search again. You know, this is one of those things which I understand, but again, a lot of times, you know, they tell you don't use anything that's over 7 years old. Well, I agree and disagree with that. The agreement on that is we get, okay, we want new research. We want things that people have done, you know, in the last few years. It's so, you know, using the newest technology that we have and all these other things that maybe, you know, are apparatuses and all these other things, you know, that this apparatus, you get, okay, instruments and things like that. That makes some sense. But again, you also want to look historically at what we know, okay? So again, maybe you don't want to spend too much time in the 1960s and 1970s and 1980s and 90s, but you need to build up a history sometimes, especially when you're writing a dissertation or a thesis. You got to show what's been done for a while. You know, like, okay, this really started back when Arnold and those guys were bodybuilding, and then, you know, it's progressed to the 80s and the 90s. You know, bodybuilders today still use these methods, but they've added these, you know, whatever it is, right? So sometimes it's good to build the history. But again, a lot of times we limit the number of years for the search because there's certain things that they didn't have back then that we can now measure now, okay? Again, humans are animals, right? So, you know, if you're looking at the effects of certain things like, you know, you're looking at artificial sweeteners, right? There's stuff that we've done on humans, stuff we've done on animals. Now, again, you've got to be careful with using the animal studies, but, you know, if you're trying to say, you know, there's a possibility of a risk with something, you probably won't find it in human studies, especially with that, because, you know, nobody ingests enough artificial sweetener to, you know, where we would necessarily say it, or we haven't had long enough studies where people have tracked folks that have had artificial sweeteners over their lifetime, and they can also take out or take an effect, you know, like all the other lifestyle things that they do, right? Because you can't have somebody live in a bubble and it's like, all right, you know, you're gonna just eat, you know, we're gonna have you just eating rice and beans, and then everything else has artificial sweeteners in it. We're gonna see what your body does, right? And just look at that, and we're gonna give people different amounts of artificial sweetener and see these people versus these people. They're all under the exact same diet, you know. Well, and we're going to do the exact same things in these little research labs, and we're going to watch them over 20 years to see what happens, right? That we can't do that. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to sign up for that study. Okay. So a lot of times we want to, you know, researchers will say, okay, well, let's take some mice or some rats, let's load them up with something and see what happens. Okay, and so then we see something, you know, like they had the study where it's like, okay, well, when we loaded them up with artificial sweeteners, I think it was aspartame, was the one that's like, okay, well, these rats or these mice got cancer. Okay. Okay, so how do we play that out with humans? All right, well, there's a possibility if you get too much of it, there's that possibility, but from what we've seen with people that take in normal amounts, we don't see any harmful effects. Okay, so what's the key takeaway with that? Well, we know in large mass quantities, as we do with most other things, that if you take in large mass quantities, there is a detrimental effect, and that's all we know. And we also only know that there's a detrimental effect in animals. So there's a possible, if you decide to eat your body weight plus some in artificial sweetener every day, more than likely something bad's going to happen. But we sort of already know that. We like to confirm things, I guess, right? So again, you've got to eliminate, you've got to figure out, do I want to look at the studies in humans versus animals? And again, if you are in our field, you always want to do human studies 99.9% of the times because you're studying humans anyways, right? Okay. Reference management software enables storage and organization of reference lists, generates specific reference lists for paper chapter, provides numerous choices for editorial styles. Again, these are all different ones on here. You can also, you know, Word has its one that it uses, and depending on what you're writing, sometimes that'll work, sometimes it won't. You know, a lot of times the APA doesn't meet up to, some of the APA standards, even though it's the APA 1. And it's fine to use. I mean, I used it in my dissertation, and I just had to go back through once it produced everything and just do some little changes here and there, just because that was easiest for me at the time when I was writing it. But again, you can use other products as well. So go through the check your understanding. If you guys have any questions, please email me. Journal peer review process. Editors send submitted manuscripts to three reviewers who are knowledgeable about the content. So there is a journal that sends me stuff every now and again. Okay, and I read through and determine whether or not I feel like it's ready to be published, if changes need to be made, as well as other reviews. Okay. We compile lists of suggestions for improving the manuscripts. We comment on the suitability of the manuscripts for publication. Okay. So again, I may say, all right, what you guys did was fine. It just needs to be rewritten. The writing's sloppy, or the writing's fine, but you guys, there's some flaws in what you're looking at here, seeing here, saying here. So, a lot of times, we like to overstep what we found, and you look at it and you say, look, the results are saying this, but you're trying to push it out and say that this actually happened. Okay, can't take it that far, or your data is not matching up with this. Okay, so you make those suggestions. Okay. The editor will return the reviewer's suggestion to the authors with a letter indicating that the paper is either accepted, rejected, or needs revision. So again, if everybody feels, the three reviewers look at it and they're, each one of them is like, no, this fine, this fine, this fine. You get the check mark, it goes through. Now it could be that the study is just horrible, and all of them can say, yeah, it's rejected. I don't even know, like they need to do an entire, new study. That's like rejected, right? Needs revision is like sort of slight rejection. It's not ready, so to speak. But with some work, to make the revisions, if you do these revisions, some people take that as like a hit. To be honest, it happens. That usually happens more than just getting like the fly through, right? And that's not a big deal. And so again, if you're doing research and things like that, don't take that as a big, kick to your ego. That's normal. So when you get that one, just make the revisions. It's good to go. Okay, so that's what you do. Just make the revisions. It's good to go. So you resubmit, and then as long as you, again, go through the check marks, don't skip anything that they want to revise. You go through there, you're good to go. Okay. Indicators of journal quality: the use of peer review process, the low acceptance rate. Okay. Again, people, it's one of those things that's, you're like, man, low acceptance rate. Again, why is that important? Because again, you don't want a journal that just takes everything. Okay, and again, that's one of the things you need to look at, because there are some journals out there that sound, like they're good journals, but there's some journals that I've looked at, like I've looked at, and again, I don't read through like full-on journals. I look for certain things, but I may look at like, okay, like say again, we'll pick on keto diet. I could find in the same, there's some journals out there, I can name them, where you'll find one paper that says, oh yeah, the ketogenic diet will give you liver cancer. And then there's another thing that says, oh yeah, the ketogenic diet's the best diet to lose weight. Other ones say, oh yeah, the ketogenic diet's the worst diet to lose weight. Oh, the keto, and it's all in the same journal, because they just accept everything. And they're like, oh yeah, keto is kind of a hot topic. So, they just take it and put it in there. It sounds like a big journal and everything. And, when you look at the surface, you're like, this seems like it would be, but it's not. Okay, so again, low acceptance rate shows that people really scrutinize what's being processed and really look at, the stuff coming in here. They're making sure that, they're good quality research projects, and it's not just everything coming in. The journal impact factor, okay? So what's the impact it has on your particular field? And then the reputation. Okay, there's some journals out there that have great reputation, right? For me, the NSCA Strength Conditioning Journal is a great source. To me, it's my favorite source for exercise-related stuff. The journal, the JISSN, International Society for Sports Nutrition, is the best nutritional source journal, right? Those are usually my first two I go to, right? All right, so here's the impact factor. So A is the number of times papers published in the journal from this time to this time are cited. B is the number of all papers published in the journal between those times. And that gives you that idea of how important that journal is in a particular field, because again, it gets cited a lot versus how many papers were actually published in it. Okay? And again, you've got to be really careful. Most online content is garbage. So again, the first place people go to in our particular fields, uh, and I'm not talking about professionals, right? So I'm not. Where do people go for fitness advice and nutrition advice? First place they usually go to is like Instagram and Facebook and all that. Second place they do is they Google. These are the worst places to go first. Now, again, you can tell people to go to the peer-reviewed journals, but again, as soon as somebody starts trying to read through one of those things, it's not, they're going to be like, okay, this is not, this is not Karen from Facebook giving me a quick thing on how to do this particular diet or to use this particular product or whatever else. People want the nitty gritty. And the reason for that is because nobody likes to do work, right? We're all inherently lazy to some extent. Some of us just realize the value of putting in the work to get what you want out of it, right? So you can look at it this way. It's the whole Three Little Pigs story, right? You can build the house quick. You can spend the time, you just breaking it down. You can do the straw, the sticks, or the bricks. The bricks take the longest, right? That's what real research is, right? You're doing the bricks. It's tedious work. You gotta, you may have to research what certain things mean and say because it may be above your pay grade. But again, if you want to know what the nitty gritty is about a diet or a supplement or anything else, that's where you go first, right? We don't go to Karen. Karen on Facebook's the straw house, right? Going and following Instagram folks and what they're doing and saying to do and take and eat and all that. That's the straw house, right? The sticks would be sort of going to folks that you trust, whether it's, I would be a stick house, unfortunately. I wish I was bricks, but that really is. It is. It's, again, you're like, okay, look, I don't want to actually read the research myself, so I'm going to go to people that actually read the research and all that. Again, going to the Alan Aragon review is sticks. Now, again, I'd say he's big, thick, like wood planks and stuff. Not diminishing him by any, but again, that's for folks that don't want to actually go to the research, right? So again, the professionals, the true professionals in the field, by asking them and talking to them or getting stuff from them, that is, like in that story, that's going to building the sticks house. And then again, actually getting to the peer-reviewed research and reading it yourself, that's building the house out of bricks. Okay. So again, that's really the concepts of, the level of information. Okay. So critiquing an introduction. Do the first several sentences capture the reader's attention? And again, you got to be understanding with this. When I'm reading research, I'm reading stuff in my profession. I'm a nerd, so to speak, in that profession. So again, does it, when I'm writing, if I was going to write something, I'm writing it for people like me who are going to read it. I'm not writing it for somebody who's like, they just finished the 7 books of Harry Potter or the Lord of the Rings or they just read incredible literary pieces of work that capture imagination. It's not the same thing of trying to get your attention, right? It's, does the first several sentences encompass what you're looking for? And is it like, okay, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah. Is it compelling rationale for the study presented? Okay. Does it tell you what you need to know about where it's going? Okay. Is it clear how the present study fits within the body of existing literature? Okay. So what they're going to do, are they writing some review of lit, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, and by the way, here's what we're doing our hypothesis. You're like, what does that have to do with what you just wrote about in the review of lit? Where's it adding into that body of research you just talked about? Okay, and is the purpose of the study clearly and concisely stated? So when you're looking at that particular study, do you know exactly what they did and why they did it? Okay, that's what you want to know. All right. The method section, are the participants' characteristics clearly identified? They were guys. They were girls. All right. Were they kids? Don't know. Did they have any diseases? Don't know. What's their race? Their age range, their fitness levels, their current nutritional state. I don't know. Right? That's not what we want. We want as much information as possible. Okay. Is the apparatus or instruments, right? So when you're using either equipment or some type of questionnaire or something described in sufficient detail that another researcher could repeat the study. That's important. I want to be, I'm like, all right, I want to do something similar. And I want to use that questionnaire. By me reading that, do I know what that questionnaire is and where I can find it? Or okay, you used a BIA. We use a biological impedance. All right. Well, which one? Right? There's several brands. And again, within those brands, there are several models. Which one did you use? Okay, you said they did some type of chest press activity. Did they do it on a machine? Did they do free weights? Did they do push-ups? What did they do? Right? I need to know. Because again, a push-up test versus a bench press test versus a sitting upright chest press, are going to yield different results, again, with different clients, right? So again, a person that's never lifted before is going to see much different results on something that's very, like low user IQ, such as a chest press machine, versus push-ups, which is going to be the next step up, right? Which is going to, you've got to teach them correct push-up procedure, versus a bench press, which is going to be a lot more complicated. And then on the bench, were they using a bar or dumbbells, right? So those are all things. It needs to be sufficiently described, okay? And again, how many reps did they do? What were we doing? High reps, low reps, high weight, low weight? What was going on? The experimental protocols clearly spelled out. So could you go through and do that exact same thing, right? Is it so clear that you could go through and repeat that experiment after reading it? Because you're like, okay, let's say you have a lab with all the equipment on which you're reading it about, you could go through and do it exactly how they did it to see if it really did work, okay? And then are the statistical procedures explained? Right? They're like, okay, well, we saw this relationship. I'm guessing that's a correlation, but, explain to me how you did that correlation. What did you add in? Was there any factors that you limited out? Again, did you do, t-tests, ANOVAs, MANOVAs? What do you give, two-factor, is it paired? Is it what did you do? Okay, we want to know these things. We've got to have an idea of how you statistically divided things out or added things in and those type of things to understand why you got the results you got. Critiquing a results section. Is the description of the results complete, concise, and well organized? Right? So did they get to a point, or were they just very vague? Did it leave you like, all right, what's going on here? Right? I've read some things. Well, there's an effect. Okay, what was that effect? Or they'll be all over the place. Again, usually don't find those in good research journals. Okay? Are the tables and graphs appropriately used to supplement the text without being redundant? A lot of times you'll see table 1, table 2, table 3, table 4, and you're like, okay, we got a bar graph, and a line graph and a dot plot graph, all saying the exact same thing. What was the point? Okay, you know, and then we've got the actual statistical, you know, table here says all these, you know, each one of those needs to build to the story, yes, but you need to be able to see some different things within those. Okay. Are the tables and graphs clearly labeled, and do they contain enough information to stand alone? So have you ever looked at a table graph and you're like, okay, what is this? You know, I understand this part of it, but what is this, right? It needs to have enough detailed information in the graph or in the table so that when you're looking at it, you can go, oh, okay, I see this. I understand this. Okay, this is what happened here, right? You're not having to be like, okay, well, what's this line? Where did this come from? Okay. Are interpretive comments saved for the discussion section? Okay, and again, be careful with the comments in the discussion, right? Don't say that something happened that didn't happen. Don't say that this proves something that it didn't prove, right? It needs to be, you know, from what we got here and the statistical results that we saw, this is what happened in this particular study. What does that mean for everything else? Well, if you work with this population and this, you should see these similar things. Hopefully, you know, I mean, basically, hopefully. Okay, what about an older population or younger population or different gender or different race? Or, you know, don't know. You can extrapolate that out to those things that they were not included in your study, right? Critiquing, discussion, conclusions are the results related back to the hypothesis. You know, here was the hypothesis of what was going to happen, and then they got this whole discussion conclusion that has nothing to do with what they expected to find or they were even looking for, right? And that shouldn't happen in a good peer-reviewed journal, right? Are the results explained within the context of the results of similar studies? So again, you know, they may say, you know, again, what we've seen with protein and supplementing and making sure you get so many grams per kilogram, this goes along with the so-and-so study and this study and this study. It's just now that we added this component of exercise versus this component of exercise, we're seeing similar results. So again, it works great in high intensity AMRAP training, works great in you know, moving heavy weights, but it also works well in folks that are doing exhaustive, you know, muscular endurance, or it works great in folks that stay in that 8 to 12 rep range, that what we quote unquote call the hypertrophy range. So, you know, those type of things, right? Are any unexplained factors or loose ends addressed? Again, sometimes you have some weird things that happen in research. You get outliers and things like that, and you got to talk about that. Well, we didn't know, but this subject was also taking these supplements while in the study, and we found out afterwards. So, you know, that's why, you know, if you look at his or her data, which, you know, you won't say who the person is, but it'll say, you know, that's why their dot's over here, not in the grouping. Okay. You know, this person found out during the study that they had this particular disease, or they had an injury or something else that happened that skewed the data. You know, they either didn't perform well, or they performed way too well, or, you know, they don't fit into the groupings, right? So you address those, you know, and you say, that's why, you know, well, you started with 30 subjects. Why does it only talk about 20 at the end? Well, we lost 10 folks throughout the thing. And explain why you lost 10 folks. Okay? Are the conclusions appropriate given the results and the delimitation of the study? Again, you can't extrapolate things out to the whole general population when you studied 18 to 35-year-old women, right? We can't say, okay, this works for everybody. No, it works for 18 to 35-year-old women, right? Well, what about men? All right, we can do a study with the 18 to 35-year-old men. And again, if we did both those, can we say it works for everybody? No, it works for that age range. And again, you know, what are the races you include in there? Do you have a good mix of everybody, or is it majority Native American? Is it majority white? Is it majority African American? Is it majority Latino? What was your groupings? Because again, that's where you extrapolate it out to. That's where we can generalize it out to, is just to that group, right? Don't go beyond those factors. All right, so is the reader left with the feeling of so what? That you never want that. Okay, you want the research to prove to some type of point. And again, sometimes when there's no findings, that helps too, right? So again, one of the things is people go to prove that a certain diet is superior to other diets, and what you're always going to find is especially if they controlled for calories, you're always going to see that. We looked at 10 different diets, and all of them were on 1,000-calorie diet. All our subjects were basically this, like they're similar in age and things like that, gender. We had them do the exact same workouts, and we found in all 10 diets, all groups lost weight at 1,000 calories. And some people are, well, so what then? What's the best? No, that's just showing you. All right. So sometimes when you might feel that it's, sometimes you might feel that and it's unjustified because you were hoping the particular diet you're hoping to jump on was going to be superior, where it just goes back to what, those of us in nutrition and fitness, really understand is it's a calories thing. That's it. It's a calories thing. There's no other magical, you know, ingredient in the diets other than it's a calories thing, right? So when I read that stuff, it's not a so what. It's like that's what we expected to see. But now you've proven it for yourself that well, whoever did that research, they may have had a bias towards a certain diet. Hopefully, they don't have that bias anymore. Now you may see that when they're doing their conclusions, and that's not good for them to do that. But again, that's good information because again, that helps you. When somebody's asking, well, I hear, intermittent fasting is the best diet, but I just don't know if I can go without eating that long. Okay, well, that may not work for you, but look, all these diets work. Are any of these more appealing to you? Yeah. Okay, that's not a so what then, because now you can say, look, we've got a lot of different dietary things that we could try with you that might work best for you. Was this study interesting? And that's going to be up in there. Like, I mean, if you have me do like a study in some field I really don't care about, or I'm reading a study in some field that I really don't care about, it may not be interesting to me, but I'm also not in that field and I don't care about that field. Somebody may just be like, oh, yeah, you need to take a look at this. I'm like, I really don't care. So that's not fair. But if you're in that field, it needs to be something that is interesting within that field, not a so what. Like you don't want to, and again, not the thing about the, okay, so you did all this and so what, but well, why was this even done? This doesn't help in any regards to anything. Okay? So was it worth doing? Was the paper well written? Man, if you can't make sense of it because the person writing it, you're like, okay, are they even, are they writing at an appropriate level of expertise, one, and two, are they even writing in the right language? They're going in and out of English, I think, or whatever, they can't sentence structure to where a sentence makes any sense of where they're going, right? If you're reading through this and you're like, man, I'm having to reread every paragraph several times to try to put together what they're saying because the writing is so horrible, that's bad. Did the study uncover new information, right? Every study should give you something new to it, right? Sometimes they're little tiny things, but we don't want people doing the exact same thing over and over and over again, okay? Now, sometimes some people will do an old study, but they have new equipment to analyze things, right? That does add some new to it, all right? So don't get me here like, okay, well, how come this one's important and this one's important? They were done 10 years apart. Well, because we weren't able to analyze things at this level then. And so now, like I said, sometimes we're trying to figure out that why that we quite don't understand, okay? And so now with new equipment, we might have a better understanding of the why factor in things, not just, okay, if you do this, this happens, right? So understand that, right? And do the results of the study form the basis for new research questions, okay? That's always great because, it's like, okay, well, we found this, but if we could get more people, or if we could get different people, or if we had this equipment, or we could do this, we could control for this, what would happen, right? And so that's always good, right? Check your understanding, go through all those. So writing a lit review, determine the scope and perspective of the review and the papers to include. Again, you don't need to put, some people try to get everything on a subject. So, you know, like I've had some papers, you know, like where I've had my students, you know, they want to write a lit review on ACL injuries. I'm like, great, there's a lot of stuff on ACL injuries. Man, they give me stuff on like just the ACL and I'm like, look, give me a brief description of the ACL, what it does, but I don't need 8 pages on the ACL. We're talking about the injury, you know, like what are the common injuries? What are the common mechanisms for that injury? You know, include what sports, you know, are the highest, you know, are the highest contributors. You know, most people get ACL injuries, you know, gender wise, you know, again, was it, and again, you know, so you got females versus males, were most injuries contact versus non-contact, and so on and so forth. Those are what we want to know. You know, I don't need, you know, you to write a thesis on the ACL itself. Right? We're looking at injuries. Okay. Prepare an outline that begins with an introduction, ends with a summary, and includes logically organized. Man, again, get from A to Z, going through the alphabet. Don't go A to C to B to R to J to T. You know, make a nice, concise flow of where you're going. And again, that can happen in different ways. So again, if you're looking at something historically, you can start with, here's the earliest things that happen on, this is the last thing, where you go from general to specific of what you're talking about, or sometimes you go from here's the specific things happen and here's how it pyramids out to why this is all relevant in today. It needs to make sense the way that you are putting it together. So there needs to be some logical organization. Okay. Again, the introduction needs to capture the reader's attention. Remember, your reader should be somebody that's interested in that subject, so it doesn't have to be dummied down to, you know, in a galaxy far, far away. You know, you're not doing that. Right? It's just, look, this is for nutrition nerds, this is for exercise nerds, or a combination of both. Okay, let's capture their attention. Again, why is that something of interest and importance? You know, a lot of time, you know, I'm not gonna put in there, look, everybody's looking for the right diet. Duh. You know, I mean, but okay, so why is this important? Okay, why is it interesting? Right? So you need to explain out why this is important. You know, who's this gonna help? Who's this gonna give information to where they can implement it out in the real world and go, here, right? Identify major subtopics included in the review and explain why they're relevant, right? Again, like I said with the ACL stuff, so you're looking at ACL injuries, all right? Some of the subtopics, genders, right? Females have more ACL injuries than males, okay? What sports contribute mostly to it? Those are subtopics. Are most ACL injuries contact related or non-contact related, all right? You're looking at, do they happen usually at the beginning of games or at the end of games? So now we're looking at fatigue factor versus, you know, is that add into it, right? Those are all subtopics, okay? Determine the number and titles of subsections, consider organizing around those. So again, you know, so you have all these different subsections, how do they build on each other? So that's how you want to do your thing. You don't want to just go from like, okay, we're talking about genders and all of a sudden we're talking about sports, right? Or, you know, we're going to go from, okay, well, women get hurt more. Now we're just getting into the sports. Why did you go in that direction? Okay. Again, there's certain sports that not all men and women play, and especially when you're looking at organized sports. So, you know, if you're going to have tackle football, there's not that many tackle football leagues for females. So if that's going to be something in there, you don't want to go from talking about like women getting injured and then, all right, let's talk about tackle football, right? Because again, there's not a lot of tackle football or softball, right? Unless, you know, like if we're looking at competitive sports that are played at the high school, college, you know, we don't have males that play softball unless they're rec leagues. So if we're looking at that, we're not going to look at like male injuries, and we're talking about like competitive softball injuries, because again, most competitive softball injuries that you're going to look at are going to deal with female injuries, right? So again, that doesn't make sense to go from this to this, right? So make sure that you have a nice fluidity to why you went where you went there. So different method, the different method approaches to a problem area, different subtopics within the larger area of particular interest, or you can do areas of agreement and areas of controversy, right? So you can start with, okay, all of these have these components. So again, the diets, all of these diets have people where they're eating less calories, but here's the differences. This one's less fat, this one's less carbs, this one's less of both. This one you just eat less often. This one you have a lot of little meals. This one you have one big meal, whatever it is. Okay. So you go from here's what we all have in common. Here's the differences. And when you summarize it, highlight the main points. So, like I told you, when you're writing things, tell people what you're about to tell them. So give them go into it. And you get to the end of it, and you summarize it, and you say, here's the main things to take away from this. Okay? You reinforce that take-home message. And again, in the summary, don't go, oh yeah, and by the way, guess what I didn't talk about? You don't throw it in there. Okay? Not the place. All right. Again, proofread everything before you send it off, because last thing you want is somebody being like, this is just horrible. Absolutely not. Right? In the understanding. All right. So you guys go through any of the check your understandings. If you don't understand something I explained, again, email me, let me know, or we can discuss it when we're doing the online lectures. And I'll help you guys through that. Again, I know research for a lot of folks, this, coming into this major, you might have thought, oh yeah, I'm going to learn how to exercise. I'll learn about diet. You may not have thought you're going to learn about research, but I'm telling you, this class and the research may be the most important thing that you do learn, because again, why do you do what you do, right? If you're going to tell somebody to do this exercise versus this exercise, this diet versus this diet, why? Okay, that's the biggest thing that you need to understand is the why. Where do we find the why? The research. Okay, again, you can go to different websites or different Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts, and people will give you a why, but there's no science behind it, or they make it sound like there's science, and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I guess I need to be vegan now, or I need to be keto, or whatever it is. And it's based on misinformation and misunderstanding rather than really is this true, right? You need to, again, we want to always search for the truth, right? We don't want to just do things because so-and-so told us to do it, okay? Because again, in the end, if it doesn't work, why did it not work? Well, if it doesn't work for you, now you're left going, well, if this is the only diet that works and I can't do this diet, I guess nothing's ever going to work for me, and that's not the truth, right? So if you can understand those things, you can not only help yourself, but again, I'm speaking to students. You guys are getting out as professionals. This way, you can help other people. Okay, and you've got to be able to read research to truly help other people. Okay, and so it's a very important skill to have. All right, chapter 3. Any questions? Please contact me.